They were already laughing when the elevator doors slid open. That kind of laugh that's sharp around the edges, a performance just loud enough to make sure someone hears it. And I did. Lord knows I did. Bro, one of them chuckled, nudging, his friend with a coffee in one hand and arrogance in the other. Imagine going to trade school just to end up mopping floors in a tech building you'll never afford to enter otherwise. His friend laughed harder, didn't even try to be subtle. Nah, bro, he probably didn't even make it to trade school. That's pure mop instincts. Born with it. They didn't look at me. They never did. Not directly. They looked through me like I was a fixture, like the bucket or the broom, something that belonged to the background. I stepped inside the elevator, with them, slow even, pushed the button for floor 34. Silence wrapped the ride for a moment, not because they suddenly got respectful, but because they were calculating something. Floor 34? That wasn't for janitorial staff. That floor had passcodes, glass doors and whiteboards filled with ideas these boys couldn't spell on a third try. Sir, one of them piped up, unsure now. That's the executive floor. You might have hit the wrong... I turned my head slowly, just enough for my eyes to meet his. You boys headed up? I asked. Or just running your mouths? The shorter one blinked, trying to square my voice with the patch on my shirt. That read Eddie. Just Eddie. No last name, no logo, not a single giveaway. The taller one nudged him again, whispering, Bro, shut up. Maybe he got called for something. They both stood straighter. Like respect could be scrambled together last minute if you just stood tall enough. I didn't say another word, didn't have to. When the doors opened on 34, I stepped out first. Let my boots echo on the marble. Let the security cameras watch. Let them see, because those boys, they didn't know I owned this building, didn't know I wrote the first lines of code that launched the entire firm, didn't know I sat on every board that mattered. They just saw a black man with scuffed boots and a name patch, but that's okay. They'd find out soon enough, because the quarterly meeting started in 15 minutes, and this time, I was calling it. I didn't walk fast, didn't need to. The silence behind me stretched like a rubber band, pulled tighter with every echoing step I took down that corridor. The interns stayed frozen in the elevator, jaws tense, eyes darting. I imagined them trying to figure out if I was the head of facilities, or maybe some union rep they weren't supposed to cross. They wouldn't land on the truth, not yet. The executive suite was half glass, half steel, cold, modern, and white as printer paper, designed by someone who thought minimalism was a personality. I had signed off on the remodel 3 years. Ago then never stepped foot in it. Not once. I preferred my old office 2 floors down, the one with a cracked leather chair and 3 clocks that all ran 5 minutes apart. I liked things a little off. Off kept people honest. As I pushed through the glass doors to the main conference room, Sheila looked up from her tablet and smiled. She was the only one who never forgot. "Morning, Mr. Ellison," she said with a wink, her voice just loud enough for the 2 interns, who were now peering through the glass like kids outside a candy shop, to hear. I gave her a nod. Set. My keys on the table and took the seat at the head. Still warm. Someone had been sitting there, assuming I wouldn't show. I didn't need to ask who. Sure enough, 2 minutes later, Martin barreled in with a grin too wide and a shirt too tight. "Eddie," he boomed, loud enough to sell the lie to the room. "Didn't know you were coming today." "I'm here," I said flatly. He always called me Eddie, even when we were in front of clients. Said it kept things casual. What it really did was let him pretend I was just the relic founder, the backstory, the nostalgia piece. Martin had been climbing since the day I handed him the COO badge. Slick, fast-talking, brilliant on paper. But see, paper burns fast. And Martin? He'd been printing lies like wallpaper. I looked around the table. 6 board members, 2 new faces, 1 I hadn't signed off on. "Let's get started," I said, and watched Martin's smile twitch. Sheila handed out the folders I'd had, her prep that morning. They were thick. "I thought we were waiting for HR and legal," Martin asked, eyeing the interns still outside. I turned to the glass. The boys jumped back like I'd caught them peeping, which I had. "They're just observing," I said. "Good to teach respect early." Sheila opened the first folder. Inside were screenshots, budget line items, names, receipts. "This quarter, we've had a few discrepancies," I began, slow and deliberate, "especially around operations." "Expenses and staff retention." Martin cleared his throat. "Eddie, if this is about the cleaning crew budget again—" "It's not," I cut in. "Though funny you mention them." I let that sit. Then, "One of your interns made a joke this morning, said I probably didn't even finish trade school." The table froze. Martin's face twitched. "Kids, you know how they are." "No," I said. "I don't think you do." Because I built this company with night school degrees and hands that used to bleed from double shifts, and now those same hands held the evidence that could fire half the room, but that part would come later. First, I was going to teach them what power looks like when it doesn't ask to be seen, and it started with a name tag. Martin's hand twitched toward the folder like it might bite him. He flipped the first page, lips tightening as his eyes scanned down the columns. Bonuses, travel, stipends, consulting payments to shell companies with names like Sable Holdings and Northstep LLC. All of them traceable, all of them approved by him. "Let's talk about trust," I said quietly, leaning back. Across the room, the younger board members shifted uncomfortably. Some looked to Martin for cues, others looked to me, like they were seeing me for the first time, past the overalls, past the silent walks through the lobby. Martin cleared his throat again. That tick he had when the spotlight burned too hot. "Eddie, Mr. Ellison," he blinked. "Right, of course, Mr. Ellison. I think if there's been a misunderstanding, there hasn't." I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. Years of silence had trained it into a blade. 10 years ago, I continued, I started this company with 3 things: a laptop that crashed every other day, a second-hand coffee pot, and a bet that people still respected builders more than buzzwords. I looked him dead in the eye. And I built. I cleaned the floors when we couldn't afford janitors. I slept on the couch when the server room overheated. And I hired you, Martin, because I thought you understood the grind. He started to speak again, but I held up a hand. "And what you did with that trust was start spending my company like a scratch-off ticket." Someone at the far end of the table, Ms. Ibarra, sharp as ever, narrowed her eyes. "These are real?" she asked, tapping the folder. Sheila spoke up for the first time. "Double verified by our forensic accounting consultant." I had her. "Review Martin's authorizations last quarter." Quietly. A couple of the board members leaned forward, reading faster now. Martin stood. "Okay, now hold on. I didn't approve anything that wasn't budgeted." I pushed the final envelope toward him. The last one, his signature, the payment order, and the invoice from Sable Holdings, sent from his wife's email address. The room turned stone cold. He stared at it. Chest rising too fast. "This is out of context," he muttered. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh," I said. "I think it is. But don't worry, legal already has copies. So do our investors. I just wanted you to hear it here first." I stood then, slowly. Behind me, the interns in the hallway were now joined by a few more, wide-eyed, whispering, watching. Martin sat back down, hard. I looked to the board. "You can vote to terminate him after this meeting. That's your call. I'll step out and let you do your job." Then I looked at Sheila. "Let them in." She opened the door, and in walked a dozen interns, including the 2 from the elevator. Faces flushed, mouths shut tight. "Sit," I told them. "You're here to learn." I paused, then added, "And you're lucky. Most people don't get to learn humility this early." They sat. Not a single word. And for the first time in years, I felt the company breathing again, real, alive, and finally clean. The air in the boardroom had thickened, not with noise but with awareness. 12 interns sat stiff around the back wall, flanked by glass and tension. The same 2 boys who cracked jokes in the elevator were avoiding eye contact, eyes fixed, on the conference table like it might collapse beneath the weight of what they'd just witnessed. I let the silence stretch. Let it do the teaching. Because sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's accountability. Martin was quiet now, slouched halfway down his chair like gravity had caught up to him all at once. His eyes flicked to his phone, probably waiting for a lifeline. But none would come. Not this time. I walked slowly around the table, stopping behind one of the younger board members, Darius. Brilliant mind, Harvard tie. But he still called me Eddie when clients weren't around. He looked up, sheepish. "Mr. Ellison, I think we all just want what's best for the company." "Do you?" I asked. "Then maybe you should have looked closer at the numbers before rubber-stamping Martin's proposals." His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I turned to the interns. "How many of you know who founded this company?" One hand went up, the girl with the burgundy notebook and a calm, observant expression. She hadn't laughed in the elevator. "I read about you," she said quietly. "You?" "Used to deliver parts at night, coded during your lunch breaks." I nodded. "That's right." Then I looked at the boys, the ones who called me Mop Instincts just an hour ago. "Didn't see that in the welcome packet?" I asked, voice flat. One of them, the taller one, Sam, looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. His hands were clasped in his lap, knuckles white. "Sir," he said finally, I'm sorry, that was out of line. I didn't know—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "You didn't need to know who I was to act right. That's not how respect works." He nodded, shame flooding his face like heat. "I'm not telling this story because I need applause," I continued, turning back to the table. "I'm telling it because too many of you forgot how this place was built. It wasn't logos, it wasn't influencers. It was sweat, silence, and second chances." I looked at Martin. "And when people start thinking they're above what they used to be, they rot the whole system." Martin opened his mouth. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." He closed it again, jaw tight, his hands twitching now, like he was rehearsing excuses he knew wouldn't matter anymore. I turned to Sheila. "How long until HR and legal are ready?" "They're outside," she said. "They've been watching the whole time through the one-way glass." Martin flinched. "They'll bring the paperwork," I said. "Make sure it's public." Then I turned to the interns, all of them. "Y'all wanted tech internships. Well, this is tech. It ain't just ping-pong tables and kombucha taps. It's ethics, accountability, knowing when to shut up and when to stand up." The girl with the notebook gave the smallest nod. "And if you can't learn that," I added, "you're not just wasting your time, you're wasting mine." I moved to the window, looked out over the city. 34 floors up, I used to stare at this skyline from the back of a city bus, wondering what it would feel like to belong here. Now I was here, and they were just starting to understand why. The hum of the city below faded behind the silence in the room. 34 floors up, and no one dared move. The interns sat upright, faces flushed, backs stiff. They were learning, but not the kind of lesson you put on a resume. This was about presence. This was about seeing what real power looked like. When it stopped pretending to be quiet, Sheila opened the door and in walked Ms. Riley from legal and Mr. Tan from HR, each with a folder in hand. They didn't speak as they placed the termination documents in front of Martin. They didn't need to. The ink was already dry. The decision had been made the moment I stepped out of the elevator. Martin's hands hovered over the folder, trembling. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You can't just walk in here dressed like some janitor and expect to—" "I didn't expect anything," I said. "That's the difference between us. I don't need costumes to command respect. The intern's eyes widened again, and one of the boys shifted in his seat like the chair had suddenly grown spikes. Martin shoved the papers away. You're doing this to humiliate me. No, I said. You did that part yourself. I stepped closer to him, slow and deliberate. You forgot where you came from, Martin. You forgot who gave you that seat. You thought the marble, the view, the catered lunches made you permanent. I tapped the folder. They didn't. He laughed once, bitter. You think this company's still yours? You haven't even been in the room for half the meetings. And yet here we are, I replied, in my room having my meeting. The table was silent. Not one board member came to Martin's defense. Ms. Ibarra didn't look up. Darius was practically chewing his lip off. Finally, Martin stood, slower than usual, like the air had grown heavier around him. This is a mistake, he said to the room. You'll see. And then he walked out, past the interns, past the glass, past the floor he used to treat like a kingdom. The door clicked shut behind him. For the first time in a long while, I felt the building shift. Not physically, but something more subtle. Like the walls exhaled, I turned back to the room. We're done pretending, I said. From this day forward, titles won't protect you. Work will. Integrity will. I looked at the interns again, now watching me like I was a living contradiction to everything they'd assumed. And if you can't respect people on the way up, don't be surprised when there's no one to catch you on the way down. Pause. Then the girl with the burgundy notebook raised her hand. Not high, just enough. Yes, I asked. Can I ask how you knew? She said softly. About the shell companies, the invoices, all of it? I smiled faintly. I still read. Every line, I said. Even if I don't sign every check. And I meant that. You can't clean a place without knowing where the dirt gathers, and you can't lead a company without keeping your eyes on the corners the light doesn't reach. I turned to Sheila. Schedule a new strategy meeting. I want every department head in here and tell them... I paused, then smiled again, this time sharp. Tell them to wipe their shoes before they come in. The floors were just cleaned. It had been 15 minutes since Martin's footsteps vanished down the corridor, and already the building felt different, not lighter. Just honest, the kind of stillness that follows a long overdue storm. I stayed behind after the interns were dismissed, after the board quietly dispersed, papers clutched tight, and faces drawn with thoughts they weren't ready to speak out, loud. Only Sheila remained, gathering the last of the folders into her tote, her hands as steady as they'd always been. If this company had a spine, it wasn't marble or steel, it was her. I have a question, she said, not looking up. I waited. When are you moving your name back onto the door? I raised my brow. She glanced up, lips curled into a knowing smile. You let Martin take it off 3 years ago, remember? Said it was time the new blood took the wheel. I hadn't forgotten. In fact, I remembered the exact day, watching him peel the frosted vinyl lettering off my office door, then call it a branding shift. Told me people needed to see a younger face at the helm if we wanted to keep landing clients. That maybe it was time I leaned into founder emeritus instead. I told him I didn't need my name on a door to know who I was, but I also never said he could erase it. I'll think about it, I said, standing slowly. Right now I've got floors to walk. Sheila nodded, but I caught the glint of pride in her eyes before she turned away. I took the stairs down to the mezzanine. Not because the elevators were busy, but because I liked walking through. The layers, seeing who stayed late, who cleaned their own coffee cups, who actually greeted the security guards by name. I passed by a team of junior developers huddled in a glass room, eyes locked on their monitors. They didn't see me. Or maybe they did, but only as the guy in boots with a quiet walk. One of them laughed suddenly, too loud. You know who that was, right? She whispered to her friend, nodding toward the hallway. That's him, that's Ellison. The friend frowned. That guy in the janitor uniform? She shook her head, eyes wide. No, that guy is the reason we have health insurance. I kept walking. Downstairs I passed Lamar, the night shift custodian, who was mopping the lobby tiles with quiet rhythm. He looked up when he saw me, surprised, then smiled. Long day, Mr. Ellison? Productive, I said. He paused. They say you tore the boardroom up, I chuckled. Just dusted it. Lamar nodded. Appreciate you reminding them we still see everything, even when they don't see us. That hit deeper than I expected, because that's what this whole thing was about. Not vengeance, not titles, just visibility, dignity. We nodded to each, rather like two men who knew the truth about floors, that they never stay clean unless someone's watching. I made my way to the far wall of the lobby, past the awards, past the glowing plaques with innovation slogans and partnership badges. There in the corner was a display I hadn't touched in years. The Founder's Wall. It used to have my name etched at the top. Years ago, someone had moved. It subtly down and left, still visible but not central, not loud. Tonight I reached into my pocket and pulled out a simple plaque, brushed metal. No gold, just my name. Edward J. Ellison, founder, worker, builder. I pressed it back into the space above the others, right where it used to be. The glue clicked firm. I stepped back, didn't need applause, just needed it to be seen. 2 weeks later, the building had new rhythms. The marble still gleamed. The coffee still hissed in chrome machines. But the energy? Different. You could feel it in the way people straightened their backs when Lamar passed by. In how the interns now greeted reception like human beings instead of scenery. In how the junior staff no longer flinched when I stepped into the room, not because they were scared, but because now they recognized me. I didn't put the overalls away. Didn't swap boots for loafers. If anything, I leaned in harder, kept the routine. Same jacket, same slow walk through the halls, same $3 lunch in the break room with the tech crew on Tuesdays, and every time someone new looked at me sideways, it reminded the rest of them to stay grounded. But not everyone adjusted so easily. Especially Derek Caldwell, VP of Strategy and Martin's hand-picked successor. He hadn't spoken to me directly since the board vote. Too proud, too bitter. Too convinced that I'd disappear again if he ignored me long enough. That changed the morning I stepped into his glass office and placed a folder on his desk. Morning, I said, like we were old friends. He barely looked up from his dual monitors. Need something cleaned? I smiled. Just making sure you got the Q3 review packet. That got his attention. He leaned back, suspicious. Why would I need that? Strategy doesn't touch operations anymore. It does now. I pulled out the second folder. Effective this week, you'll be sitting on cross-departmental panels. Budget alignment, hiring reviews, ethics checks. His eyebrows lifted. That's not how we've done it before. I finished for him. Exactly. He scoffed. With respect, sir, you can't expect senior leadership to waste time vetting janitorial hires and overtime slips. I stepped forward slowly. No anger, just presence. You think janitors don't matter? I asked. Funny. One of them just cleaned up your entire career path. He froze. I'm not here to micromanage, I continued. I'm here to make sure this company remembers who it serves and who keeps it running. I tapped the glass with my knuckle. That door behind you. You know why I had it put in? He blinked. No? So maintenance could come in without walking through the front of the office. So nobody felt the discomfort of seeing work done. I let that settle. Starting next month, that door's locked. Everyone comes through the same one, front and center. He looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Before I turned to leave, I said one last thing. Being seen ain't a privilege, Derek. It's a right. And if that bothers you, maybe strategy ain't your strong suit. That afternoon, I walked the service hallway like I used to, just to feel it under my feet. Paint chipped here and there. Lights buzzed too loudly. And yet, this is where the real heartbeat was, where the work got done, no glass, no performance. I stopped to chat with Tasha, who stocked the vending machines, helped Reggie tape up a loose pipe under the kitchen sink, left a sticky note for maintenance about the broken store lock on floor 12, because the moment I forget how this place runs is the moment I become Martin, and I'm not ever going to be Martin. It was the end of the quarter when the recognition ceremony rolled around, the one I'd quietly reinstated without anyone noticing. We used to do them back when the staff could fit into one break room and nobody wore badges with titles. This time, we held it in the main atrium. No tuxedos, no flashy stage lights, just folding chairs, string lights, and a mic on a wooden stool. Sat near the back, not because I wasn't invited up front, but because I wanted to see it from the shadows like I used to. Sheila opened the event with her usual grace, calling names with the same warmth she used whether addressing interns or execs. She had a gift that way, making every name sound like the start of something. Lamar received the new Employee Legacy Award, 32 years on night shift, never missed a day. Said maybe now he'd take one off. The interns I'd met that day, in the elevator? They'd put together a mentorship project pairing senior coders with building staff who wanted to upskill. Called it Code and Custodians. They even asked me to guest speak. One of them, Sam, approached me afterward. With his shoulders hunched but his heart wide open. I was ignorant, he said quietly. And I'm grateful you didn't shut the door. I just nodded. Just keep it open for someone else. And then came the last speech of the evening. Not by me, but by the woman with the burgundy notebook. Her name was Alana. She had started in the internship program, got hired full-time, and within 6 months was leading a data ethics initiative that had clients lining up for the pilot. She stepped to the mic, cleared her throat, and said, "We used to joke about who the most powerful person in the building was. CTO, legal counsel, CFO. But now we know what it's whoever remembers the janitor's name and means it." The room went still. She turned and looked directly at me. "Mr. Ellison doesn't talk the loudest, doesn't dress for the corner office, but when things got rotten, he didn't yell. He swept. He reminded us that leadership doesn't start when you enter a boardroom. It starts when you wipe your own damn mess." A few claps scattered, then rose into a standing ovation. I didn't stand, didn't need to. Just sat in the back in my usual overalls with boots dusted from the walk I still took through the basement every morning, and smiled because I wasn't interested in being the face of the company anymore. I was the foundation. And the thing about foundations is, you don't always see them, but you feel them everywhere.